Hi, all. Welcome back to Motivation and That for episode 2 of He Thought I Was Stable. Josh and I are going to be in here sweating really bad today. We noticed on episode 1, as we're getting used to the audio stuff, our little fan, which has been keeping us alive, you could hear in the background, and we wanted to just adjust for that. So, apologies if you're watching on YouTube and you see us start to shine. That might be what's causing it. So, we're really thrilled to do part 2 of the conversation that we started last week that had to do with what do we do and how do we navigate major career adjustments. Excitingly enough, more than 2 people listened to last week's episode, so super pumped about that. And as we go forward, we'll be having other guests join, and I'll even be doing some solo sessions. So I hope that this is kind of piqued your interest about where things might go from here. And today's conversation is going to be more about the relational discussions that happen when you're making major changes in life. For us, it's a major career shift and career change, and how we are able to have those conversations in a way that aren't, I don't know how to put it, that they're not adversarial. Like, it's not you versus me, or there's a right versus wrong answer. And we're going to reflect on an article by Carrie Kerpen. And she published something in 2020, right when the pandemic was happening and people were going through a lot of these conversations, I think, about, well, am I going to have a job? What job might I have? Is it essential? What do we do? And she put some really good tips in there. And Josh and I are going to talk a little bit about how we are utilizing those tips, which we did prior to ever reading this article, and what may or may not be working, because I think some of them are spot on and other ones are like, oh, we hadn't even thought about that yet. So again, if you are listening to this today, this doesn't have to be with a spouse, with a significant other. This can be with a parent, with a child, with one of your best friends, anyone who may feel as if they have some kind of stake in what you have going on in your life or how your life might impact them. So welcome back, Josh.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
I didn't have to go far. So, yeah.
And we're a week and a half in now to this kind of new norm for me, that I don't have a 9 to 5 schedule anymore, or for me, a 6 to 6 or 7 to 7. How's it been?
How's it been for me?
Yeah.
I mean, it's been good. Like I've said before, like I've been able to see you more, spend more time with you. It's been great, and I've seen you thriving, stressing and thriving a little bit. I mean, of course, there's like the anxious part where, you're thinking about what's next, what am I gonna do, or and I think there's always fear in the unknown, but at the same time, I get to see you have the time to do the things that you want to do, that you're able to do now, and it's oh my gosh, if there was like a number on the stress levels, I think you probably went from like 150% to maybe 20. So it's been great. Yeah.
I think that's kind of what it feels like too. And we've talked a lot about, like, the days seem like they go a little bit faster, and there's more, certainly more energy at the end of the day to do things that maybe in the past I'd be like, don't talk to me, don't touch me, don't engage with me at all.
Let me disassociate.
Exactly. I've had a lot less disassociating, I feel like, so far, but we'll have to keep an eye on that one for sure. So as we're thinking, I think having this week and a half to reflect back on and seeing kind of how things are going right now, and I'm getting a grasp for, okay, I have till mid-October to really make a decision on, securing something or not, or will I look for freelance work? Will I not? Am I going to go back to corporate life? Will I not? And those are a lot of me decisions, but they involve you. So as we were looking back on kind of, would I take this route in the first place? And then where does this path go from here? I think it's a great time to look at some good recommendations that folks have on how do you navigate those situations, because you and I talked about the fact that in the past, our past relationships did not do so well with these conversations, whether it be that we were really resistant to them, or we were the one changing, or any way, shape, or form with some of that. So it's really nice to see, I think, how we've embraced this opportunity this time around. So I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, it'll be in the link of the descriptions, a article by Carrie Kerpen from 2020, and it was in Forbes.com, and it talks just kind of about what are some of the things that you could or should consider or keep an eye out for when you're navigating those components. So we'll run through kind of all 5 of them. I think some of them will be much more relevant to us, and others I think are going to get us thinking a little bit. So let's just dive on in. And the first one's really easy, and it's the one that I think we embraced more than anything, and that is to talk, talk, talk. And I know that I get the urge to have really deep, heavy conversations at like 11 o'clock at night when I can't sleep. And I've like made some decision, and now I'm stressed about it, and I want to talk to you about it, or I want validated that I'm making the right decision, all of those pieces. And for me, that's tough because I am not a big talker to anyone about decision making, with the exception of my mother, and that's a podcast for another day. But is that something that you anticipated being involved in? Did you think this would be more of a solo decision that I would try to take on? Kind of what was your thoughts when we initiated the discussions of, I might want to quit?
I mean, honestly, like my first thought and the first thing that comes to mind is, it's about time. It was, I mean, geez, it's, I'm sure it's painful, stressful being in a situation you don't like, you don't enjoy, and it's by the end of the day you have no energy left. But I mean, it's also painful for those who have to watch you go through that. Like, you just want to shake them and say, just wake up. Like, this isn't what you love. This isn't what you like to do. And I mean, yeah, I mean, I was excited. I knew. I mean, it's always going to be a stressful situation when you don't know what's next, or you're in like almost like kind of a limbo, I guess you could say. But I think, to your point, the most important part about it was to talk about it first. Like, it wasn't like a rash decision. You didn't just be like, you weren't just like, you didn't just wake up the next day and you're like, oh, hey, by the way, I quit my job, I'm doing something else, which I probably still would have been like, oh, okay, cool. But yeah, we talked, and there was numerous talks. It's not like it just happened overnight. Like, we talked probably a little bit every other day or so about it, and that way when I think the most important part was just supporting you in the decision and supporting you, because I I don't know, I kind of took an approach that if you were constantly talking about it, if you were bringing it up, it was something you were going to do eventually. And yeah, I think communicating and support for that was number one in my mind.
Yeah, and I think that where I got nervous in those conversations is knowing you, that you were going to support me in whatever I wanted to do. And what I really was hoping, and I think you did it, was to challenge me on some of those things, and to be, make me think critically about all of the kind of elements and consequences and things like that. And I think one of the things, and I've hated it every day of the last week and a half, if not 2-3 weeks, was we made a deal that I would apply to a job every single day. That this wasn't a sit back, explore all your passion projects, and then, panic when we're up against a month of needing an income, second income in the house again. And what it's taught me is that there's a lot of jobs out there that I never even considered, whether they're part-time or contract or full-time, not in healthcare or whatever. And so it's allowed me, I think, to toss my name into the ring for stuff I never would have considered. Now, I've gotten no bites on any of it, but you're never going to know until you try. So I think that you did set some boundaries, which were good things. And some of those were, I need to learn to relax. Like, I've done some side work now for a local nonprofit, and it's 8 o'clock at night. And I'm like, I just got to check the emails. We might have had something come in.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, can you shut the computer down? Stop working.
Yeah.
And so I think that, one of the things that I know you were concerned about was, would I just throw myself into something else as heavily as I did? And so what are some of the signs that you're looking for that would say she's repeating the same thing again?
Um, when it seems like, I mean, I guess some specific examples would probably help, but um, when you're on your laptop and you're, I just occasionally, I'll say, hey, what are you doing? What's going on? Just to start some casual conversation, and you'll say, I'm working on this spreadsheet, or I'm working on this system, and you're like, oh, I'll just be a minute, and then an hour later you're still there, and you're still there, and I think, I mean, at this point, I think I know you well enough that you I mean, you really like to see success. You like to see things working well, and I think especially directly, like you're not the type of person to say, hey, or manage a team and be like, do this for me, do that for me, do that for me, and then feel like you've achieved something by your team doing it. Like you're very, very hands on, and which is great, and I think that's one of the reasons when you were in leadership positions, people really appreciated your style, your leadership style. Um, but that being said, you just being that type of person to just dive in and see it to the end, see it to success. You'll take the littlest thing or the smallest thing, and you'll want to make sure you've achieved achieved success with it, or achieved something, and you still got to step back, because I think, in my opinion, even if it's something you love or something you enjoy, um, I think there probably is obsessing to the point where you don't like it anymore, and then that becomes the thing that you stress about. We talk about, and, you say, oh, this happened today or that happened, and it just becomes a constant thing. You just repeat the cycle again.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think, and this is going to be kind of a future conversation, but, earlier this week I put a LinkedIn post up about who are you when your job is gone? And for someone like me that was so defined by my job, and a job that a lot of people didn't understand. Out with your sister yesterday, she goes, I still don't know what you do. And she's in the same industry, but she's like, no clue. And so it becomes very isolating to have a unique skill set, a unique job that then you are good at, you're high in leadership, and it becomes you. And then you walk away from it and you're like, oh crap, I think I'm kind of boring, or I don't really know what I'm good at. And so trying to learn to shift those skills into something else, or learn new skills. And I think you said something the other day, which is something about like, I don't want to fail at what I'm doing. And I quit things when it looks like I'm not going to be successful at them really, early on. And I think that's the little bit of a high I get from some stuff where I'm like, oh, this is actually easy.
Mm-hmm.
I can 100% put all my time and effort into this, and I know high chances of success, so I'm going to do it. And that, I mean, it's just an adrenaline rush, and it gets really addicting in ways. So being able to shift off of that and do some stuff like exercise, like, outdoor yard work that we need done that I don't think I'm great at, and I don't like how it turns out, but I'm going to have to do that balance. And I think that weirdly takes us into the next topic, which was trade-offs. And so, talking about, well, what do we get from me walking away from this opportunity that I've had and I've been in, and what do we lose potentially? And very unique, as we mentioned, we're sweating to death because our AC is blown pretty much in the middle of one of the hottest summers I think our area of Pennsylvania has had. And so we've been working from home in an 88-degree house on a regular basis with 90 million cats since we foster. And in the past, with no concern about future income, it probably wouldn't have been a question. But then I also get a call from my mom who says, "Oh yeah, we just spent $3,500 fixing the French drain in the Pittsburgh house," and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't have money for that sitting around." And it starts to, that money is a big trigger for me, and that was one of the big trade-offs. That's why we said I'd apply to a job on a regular basis. But what are some of the things I think, highlighted when we were talking about that would be hard trade-offs, but things that we'd be willing to do in a situation? And I know one, so I can start us out.
Go ahead.
I said I'd sell my car.
Yeah, you did.
We had 2 cars. We work from home. It's rare that one of the cars is out of the house and then the other person takes their car out of the house. Your car's paid off. I said, I'd sell mine, and we'd pocket what it is.
What's funny is, and yeah, you did say that, which, I mean, you don't have to sell your car. But I appreciate it. It reminds me of a moment I experienced. I used to work for a bar and grill, and I would sell like 6-packs out the shop, and I'd see the same people, occasionally, the regulars, if you will, we'll put it that way. And there was this one guy that used to come in all the time, and I would see him, and then I'd see his wife. Sometimes I'd see them together. They'd either go to the bar, have a couple drinks, or they would, stop in, grab something, and leave. And you really learn a ton about people when you just stop and talk to them for a couple minutes. And the one day I found out that the one lady was his wife, because I would always see them separately, coming in, coming out, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that's my wife, so and so," and you get to talking, and long story short, he told me that I mean, they were in like their late 40s, 50s, and he told me he just started like college or something like that, and I'm like, "Oh, what?" Just out of curiosity, I'm like, "What took you? Why now?" And he said he spent a good portion of time, like, throughout his life, so like basically being in a position that just made money. He didn't necessarily enjoy it, but he was supporting his wife as she was going to school, because she started late too, but he made a sacrifice to support her through it, and she went to school with me. That's how I knew his wife initially, because she graduated with me in safety science. And when she finally graduated, he was like, "Oh, okay, now it's my time. Now it's my..." And I just thought it was really great. Super small, like 5-minute conversation, but I thought it was awesome how they just supported each other through that. And I mean, that's trust, that's support. I think that all that, like, I think it's really easy for people to look at that situation and be like, "Oh, why'd you do that to yourself? Why'd you give up all this or whatever to do that?" And without thinking about the fact that if you were doing it on your own, if you're doing it by yourself, it'd be so much harder, or not even, you might not even have done it. So I just saw that, and ever since I heard his story back then, I think it was like, I don't know, I was still in college, but I respected it. I was like, that's the kind of husband I want to be. So.
Well, and I think that it highlights that the trade-off conversation is very different based on the relationship you have with people.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone is seeing you and them as a unit, the trade-off is not just, I have to give this up for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's we are giving something up in order to gain in some form or fashion, whether that's mental health, financial wellness, any of those components. And I think that that's something, before going into a trade-off conversation, each individual has to ask themselves, which is this a me and you, or it's me comma you,
Mm-hmm.
like two, competing, battling things, or are we talking about as a team what we're going to shift, what we might change?
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that, I think, then helps your negotiation powers or whatever, skills you might want to apply to that conversation. So I love how these again all tie together. It leads into like, be open to unexpected possibilities, because we tend to think about the negative consequences versus potential positive ones. So, I mentioned, oh, now there's new jobs that I might consider getting involved in. But it's really when you take the leap, and especially when you take the leap into an open void of things in many ways, there's a lot of things that could surprise you out of the blue. In today's world, it could just take one person going, oh, I really like that 30-second video you did. I'm going to pay you some money to do some influencing kind of stuff. Or, it could be someone that moves in next door that just happens to, have that right relationship and that right negotiation piece. And I think that's what's been fun for me, is that as I'm kind of promoting this podcast or other things that I'm interested in, at first it was really scary because I didn't want to admit I didn't have a plan. I didn't want to admit that I was putting you and our life at risk by, saying, oh, I'm just going to make this change at 40 years old. And what it's done is, I think it's opened up new conversations with people. So all last week, I was on the phone and chatting, and people were like, oh, what are you thinking about? I've done that too. Maybe I'll get back into it. What have you thought about maybe partnering for something? And ironically, now I don't know how quickly we can schedule them. There's like 30 people now for guest podcast episodes that have been like, yeah, I'd love to come talk about that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exciting for me. And now it shifts my way of thinking of, well, if I only have 50 listeners on a regular basis, I still want to do this because it impacts one person or two people. That's a change that then has that big ripple effect. And I think that's really important. And in a world where we are driven so much by shame of talking about unpopular choices or things, sometimes that loud voice is necessary. But I think you have been one of the ones that goes, but what if this happens? And I want to shut you down all the time. I'm like, no, like, I don't think that's going to be, an outcome that we can consider. So for me, I've lived in that tangible so much of, I need to know likelihood of that outcome. And you, on the other hand, are like, anything could happen. Where do you think some of that comes from for you? Have you found yourself, and I ask because I know the answer being kind of the job you ended up in now, like, it wasn't what you expected. They came to see you, but you seem to be able to embrace that kind of, the right thing will happen.
Yeah. I mean, I think it will. Geez, I was in a job. I mean, that. I talk about it from time to time. Anytime it comes to like workplace PTSD discussions, but I was in a job that I was just absolutely miserable. I didn't even want to get up to go to work in the morning. I'd stay up late because I wanted to spend my nights doing something that I enjoyed, and getting that, short moment of enjoyment at the end of the day to outweigh the level of how miserable I was during the day. But I mean, on my breaks, on my time off, whatever, I would, geez, sometimes I applied at 50 plus jobs a day for a month, maybe 2 months, maybe even longer. And then I'm literally sitting at home one day, waiting on a DoorDash order, and all of a sudden my phone rings, and someone's calling me about, hey, we just saw your resume here, and, just wondering if you were interested in this. And I come to find out it's not even a job I even applied for. It's just literally a random site that I dropped my resume and completely forgot about it after that. And I thought it was a scam. I thought it was a joke. And it turned out to be one of the best decisions I've ever made. And I think that it's gonna sound pretty like cliche, but like, I think life is, full of just like endless possibilities. I think a lot of times it's just hard for people to see because it's all a risk.
Yeah.
And not I think the vast majority of people are not, not comfortable with taking risks. And I mean, it's the same as, what people say is, you lose if you don't ever take the risk. So you never know. You could start doing something you love, and it might be miserable. It's like starting your own business. It's you gotta you put in a lot of work, you put in a lot of time, a lot of stress at first. You're not sure if it'll work, and then you know eventually it does. Eventually it takes off. So yeah.
Well, and for those listening or watching that don't know how we met, I mean, I just take it back to we swiped right on Tinder. And then you shut me down, and then 3 weeks later, came back around because you decided to take the risk. I lived 45 minutes an hour away and we were both traveling so much, so that's one of those unexpected outcomes. Neither of us knew what we were going into with that, and 8 months later we were engaged and living together, and like, never in a million years would you have told, I believed, if someone told me you will be moving out of the city into another area, that was never on my plan. So I think trusting some of that is important. So getting into kind of the one that I think when I saw it, I asked you because it wasn't something that we had talked about much, and that was get comfortable with resentment. And it was interesting, I think, because I was challenging myself to look at it both ways, right? My resentment that you have a job with a steady income that you don't really have to worry about. And I caught myself this week when you were stressing about something the other day and just wanting to go, it's fine, you have a job. And then being mad at myself because I'm like, well, you can't say anything because you chose to walk away from yours. Me being me, I chose to walk away. And then flipping it and going, well, he might be resentful that I'm getting to do a lot of stuff that I enjoy doing at this point. I can, decide I'm not going to work today because I don't really work at this point. I'm doing other things that, are creating who I'm going to be in the future. So are there things that, like, when you think of potential resentment that could come up during this process, because you've been through some of these things in the past, are there things that you resented when your partner changed their career, changed what they were doing, and any reason why that might have happened?
In the past?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, 20-something-year-old me was totally different, but I'm glad I experienced it then because it really helped me learn how to recognize, deal with, and manage feelings of resentment now. Um, it is so weird too because, like, in my experience when it was happening to me and my partner was changing jobs or just didn't have one, um, if I really just took a step back and thought about it and asked myself, why is this really bothering you? Like, how is this really affecting you? Or is this actually affecting you in any way, shape, or form to justify you having this sort of reaction or this feeling? And no, the answer was no. And after asking yeah, obviously it didn't happen overnight, but asking myself that question over and over and over every time I felt that way, and realizing the consequences of having arguments over resentment or being bitter about it, I realized, and it may not be the same for everybody, but it was one of the hardest things to do for me, but was to self-reflect, to look inward and say, is this feeling of resentment? Because really, I mean, on the most basic level, you're getting upset with another person because they feel that, or you feel that they're able to do something you can't, or they're not doing something that you think they should be, and it's really just this stupid like belief or false like expectation that you've made up in your head that you're placing on somebody else, and that's not on them. Like, they're doing what they want to do, and at the end of the day or the end of the month or year or whatever, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It's whether it be for them individually or for you as a couple. I mean, I honestly think it's the same as jealousy. I mean, resentment is just an absolute, just just pollutant in your brain, and it's just a waste of thought space. I mean, I will say how my thought pattern is now is a lot of times, and I think it's just human to for your first thought sometimes to be like, something negative or something, or those thoughts of resentment. But what I can confidently say that I'm able to do more oftentimes now is to once I get that thought, I'm able to recognize it. I'm able to think about, is this is this thought okay, or is it just or is it just like wandering thoughts? Is it something just purely reactionary? Like, I mean, it's just I'm able to manage it better now, and turn it into something. It's like getting mad or getting in an argument or getting upset with someone, and you have to just stop. Stop for a second, breathe, think about, is this the right way to be feeling right now, and do I want to react with how I'm feeling right now, or do I need to think about this, rest, and breathe a little bit? And yeah, I think that makes, I mean, it makes things a lot easier.
And I think what you mentioned about resentment, the need to look internally,
Mm-hmm.
is huge, because I'm thinking back to this times where I got mad at my, former partners who picked up and took new jobs. And I'm like, why would you do that?
Mm-hmm.
And it was a component of, one, did you not think about me in that
Mm-hmm.
conversation? All I've done is support you, be there for you, and you just decided to do this kind of unilaterally. So when I think back and I'm like, why would you do this? And I've supported you through this whole thing, and we're in this together, and yet you've made a decision without taking me into consideration. And that's more of a reflection on me, I think, in some ways, that, one, I was jealous because I didn't have the guts to just up and change something. And two, it takes it back to the talk conversation. Did I not tell someone I needed them to include me in that discussion? And I know you and I have just had a lot of chats about assumptions of, how do you not know? Like, why didn't you know I wanted you to talk to me about
Mm-hmm.
those? Or, that's just common sense. And sometimes it's good to over communicate in those situations. And this is one of those.
Yeah.
So the other, side of this, and the kind of last one, is to not put yourself last. And I think this is good on both ends, right? So the person who has made the decision to have the career change, and they are now going, I've got to do everything possible to make sure that things don't fall apart. Like, I've taken the risk on, they're coming along for the ride with me. And so I could see very quickly, the closer and closer I get to this cutoff date or whatever it might be, burning the candle at both ends again and going, all right, well, how am I going to have the income? Do I have the job? What else do I need to do? But I can also see it on the flip side of the person who has said, I encouraged you to take this risk,
Mm-hmm.
then putting themselves last to make sure that that other person has every opportunity they can have. And so I think it's a component of, what are some of the pieces when you think about that, of, this would be a trigger point that we need to sit down and go back to the beginning and talk. Like, is there a point where you'd be like, I can't do this at this point? Or, I feel like I'm not putting myself as a priority, or,
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking more and more of the quote unquote life beating for you to explore.
Yeah. No, I think. I mean, I'm not gonna say everybody thinks the way I do or the way you do, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, and it sounds super simple, but I think that if I mean, thinking about, well, what you said about, when am I gonna, make sure I'm not always putting myself last, and if I ever think about what you're doing, or the lack thereof, if say not having a job, or I mean, it could be something as basic as just cleaning up around the house. If I'm doing something and you're not, like, at the end of the day, like, I always think, am I happy? Is this something that I should be bothered about? And at least the answer to the first question is yes, and to the second question is no. Like, it's just ridiculous and it's a waste of time. So if I'm happy, I always think to myself, why should I be bothered by anything that you're doing? Um, and I know that, and I think it comes with trust too. I mean, I trust you to to the ends of the earth, and I know that whatever you're doing, or like I said, the lack thereof, if it really came down to, you know, it being in the most difficult situation, like say you got to the specific time period where you're like, oh my God, I don't have, I'm worried, I don't have a job, or I don't have this. I know you well enough, and I think this comes with the talk, because the more we talk, the more we communicate it, the more we get to know each other. And I'm always the type of person, I believe that it takes your whole life to really fully get to know a single person. But that communication, that talking constantly, is what builds that trust, and it builds that faith in your partner. And I know, back to what I started with before I rambled too much, but um, if it ever really came down to the most difficult, you could picture a situation, or even close to that, I personally believe that you, nor I, but specifically we're talking about your partner, would never let it get to that point. Um, and it's and I know that I don't have to worry. I don't have to stress, because I think oftentimes knowing someone just has a good head on their shoulders is confidence enough. And I don't ever think about putting myself last. I don't ever think of it that way. Um, I think it's a mutual thing. I support you, you support me, whether it be, you know, chores around the house or emotionally. And yeah, I don't ever think about putting myself last, as long as I put you first.
Well, and I think there's two caveats. The one that we keep going back to is the
Mm-hmm.
talk, right? And what I want to make sure anyone listening to this
Mm-hmm.
realizes is that the talk only works if you don't go in with preconceived notions of,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get this answer out of you.
Oh yeah, that's a bad idea. Yeah.
Because then it becomes a one way conversation and an argument in a lot of ways, and you're not open to any other possibility. And we see this a lot with friend dynamics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where someone like wants to break up with a guy, and so they come in and they're saying everything negative they can,
Yeah.
and then when the other person's like, but he's not that bad.
Like, they know the decision they want to make, but like they just can't accept
Right.
it. Yeah.
And I think the earlier on you have those discussions, the less you're already down your
Mm-hmm.
own decision pathway. So that helps a little bit. But I think there's also over talking. And you get talked out and then you disconnect from the conversation, which then can have an opposite effect. So I think there's talk, breathe, talk. Like, take a second, digest what the heck's being said, because even if you're an extrovert, to process and kind of charge up and really digest everything that's being discussed, is you still need time to do that. So to walk into something and go, I have no idea what the decision's going to be, talk to someone and then walk out and be like, 100% this is the way we're going, it doesn't, I think, probably lend itself well to not questioning that down the road.
Mm-hmm.
And who else you might want to talk with? Yes, this was a primary you-me decision, but it also impacted a couple of friends, it impacted a couple of family members, and I kept it probably closer to the vest than I had anything else. I mean, the joke for me was that my last day of work, my mom apparently didn't know that I had resigned. I'm pretty sure I told her, but nonetheless, my friend walked out and saw her and was like, oh yeah, today's Natalie's last day.
Yeah.
And she was like, what do you mean? So I think it's also not avoiding people that you think will try to challenge your decision, because that is important.
Yeah,
And
that could be a whole nother
yeah.
discussion. Yeah.
And how do you take on that challenge without getting defensive? And how do you not try to get them to see your point of view? And how do you just say, well, you know what, that's your opinion, you're entitled to it.
Yeah.
And as I look at the priorities of who's in my life to be a part of this, if you're on board, that's my number one. And so I think as people kind of wrap up today and they're thinking about this, especially because the job market is shit right now, and this is marked as explicit. So again, you were warned we were going to swear. It's really, really tough right now. And there's a lot of different moving parts. We don't know what the country will look like in a couple of years with all the budget changes and everything. So there's going to be a lot of people potentially looking for new directions, but that is also where innovation blossoms. And so why not log off of today's podcast, talk with someone that you're really close with and go, if I didn't do what I'm doing, what would you picture me doing?
What would I picture you?
Just in general, like we've already talked about this, right? But like if you weren't in safety and wellness, what would I picture you doing? Well, that's easy. Cyber something. Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, you've already got that kind of as your backup, component, but also music. Like, I also know you don't want to make those be work, because you really enjoy them. But talking to anyone and just going, okay, let's take the structure of a 9 to 5 out of the situation. Let's take whether you're a parent or not out of the situation. If you could, as a friend, as a loved one, picture someone doing something, what would that be? And what would you need? It's never too soon to consider those because we don't necessarily control our destiny in a lot of ways. Your job could, shut down tomorrow. There could be natural disasters as we're seeing everywhere. And I think talking about those scary things to know that there are always other options, even if they're not, high return on investment right off the bat, there's still good conversations to have. So, I mean, I would say that's homework for everyone, to take 10 minutes, find someone you trust, and have just a no judgments conversation about what else could life look like, and walk away and stick it in the file cabinet, process it a little bit, chew on it a bit, and you never know when it might pop back up again. But I think that's where we stand. We're going to come back to this conversation probably in a few months as we get closer to, where we're heading to with our timelines and everything, and say, okay, if we looked back, would we have done something a little different? If, we're looking forward for the next month or two, what does that look like? And I think it'll be interesting to listen even back to these episodes and go, okay, that's where we were at that time. So anything that you want to kind of wrap up today with your reflections on being the partner in this process?
No, I think maybe, two things really. In response to what you had said about, saying what would be different, how would it be different if I could choose differently? I think it's really important to, think about that in a way, like if you had to take the scary part of the risk out of it, like, and think of it that way, what would it be that you would want to do? It will definitely be scary, when you take that leap, when you decide to do something that you don't know if it's going to work out or not. But it's kind of like the whole saying where people say, if it was easy, everyone would do it type of thing. And it's just, kind of looking at it in a different way and just expect it to be, expect to be nervous, expect to be stressed, expect it to be scary, and honestly let that drive you. I've always personally just thrived under certain stresses. I was always a procrastinator, so like I had to get stuff done, so, and I was stressed. But anyway, that, and I think back when we talked about the resentment, I think it's probably a solid thing to do for everyone to, do a little bit of self-reflection, because I think one of the most important things I've ever learned in my entire life is how important it can be to just take a couple seconds and think. Like, it's so much more infinitely important than reacting. I mean, whether that be an argument you're having, a discussion you're having, it could be a meeting at work. You take a second just to think about what's going on, listen, and you never know. The next thing to come out of your mouth could be the nicest and most intelligent thing that anyone in the room has said. So, but anyway, that's it for me.
No, I appreciate it. And again, I hope we've motivated folks to, step a little bit into that scary, that unknown. And I also just want to encourage people, it's okay to feel privileged in moments where you can find yourself having those conversations. I know I'm privileged to have this sabbatical and that not everyone gets it. I also have worked anywhere from 1 to 3 jobs nonstop since I was 15. So, and going to school and all of those things. So, you put in the time and effort and you deserve a break every now and then if it's presented to you and if you can take it. And I think being like, I'm going to live in the fear for a few minutes and see how this goes is, something to really think about with those trade-off discussions. So I think that this has been a great conversation. It's very, very timely. If anyone's keeping up with current events, there's going to be people in this process that aren't even choosing it. It's been chosen for them. And so tilting or framing this in any way that might need to be. And you heard me mention throughout this some little caveats or nuggets that were instilled in me. I've been battling from my mother, who I love dearly, but she's going to be her whole own thread on this podcast. And so while this has been heavy-ish conversation, because that's really scary discussions, I think that if you are looking, to tune in to hear about how people take past pieces of their lives and traumas, I'm going to be doing a solo episode for episode 3, and it's probably going to be triggering to some folks, but I think it's really important because in these moments of space, I'm finding myself reflecting more and more on who I was, what I went through, and how that created the person that sits here today, good, bad, or ugly. And so I think we got to chat about that. And when I say we, I mean me. It'll just be me.
Just kicking me out.
Kicking him out. He's going to do editing and really just appreciate people sticking around listening to however much of the episode you listen to. Again, you can find motivation in that on YouTube. We're also streaming on Apple Podcasts, Amazon, and Spotify. And hopefully subscribe, listen. Weekly drops on Sundays for folks, so you have all week to catch up and listen when you get a break, or maybe even Sunday evening when you're going through the Sunday scaries. Let this distract you a little bit. So thanks everyone. Signing off for now. See you soon.